Good. Yeah, big multi-tenant manufacturing complex, 54 acres, huge warehouse, a lot of storage and facility. This is like the again, don't this is not from me, this is from Parker. So Parker, maybe I'll let you take the reins if you'd like to kind of walk us through this deal. Give us an opinion on where you're at on things and what the story is.
Yeah, hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Good. Yeah.
Awesome. It's actually funny. So, Eric and I were, this was kind of brought to both of us, via like a kind of a wholesaler type guy. It's kind of weird. This guy, this group of people, they kind of come across as, oh, we're this family office. And it's just kind of funny because they just basically go on Crexy and find stuff that's available and they just get it, basically to an accepted LOI and then just upcharge it however much to so they can cut it back down to like a 7.5 cap. So and then they just try to take the spread. And it's pretty aggressive that they try to do this on a basically a $35 million property, which is pretty crazy. So but with this, I mean, it's a million square feet. I spoke to the broker. It's right now it's like 875,000 available square footage for lease, and there was currently 30,000 vacant, and then their biggest um, the biggest tenant in the building is actually going to knock out and redesign that 30,000 square feet. So they already take up 315,000 square feet, and they're going to like take on that additional 30. So it's going to be 100% capacity for that 870. And a pretty good upside on this too, because I guess there's a million square foot available. That other 130,000 square feet isn't usable because it's not sprinkled. So it's like obviously if you're like, oh hey, I want to have an additional 130,000 square feet of upside, obviously you're going to spend a freaking ton of money on getting it sprinkled. But I imagine in the long run it would be a fantastic way to increase the value. But I think there's six tenants currently. The NOI, they sent me their trailing 12. It's like 3.49 million. The broker said the pricing guidance was around like a mid to high 9.5 caps, or mid nine, high nine. So, um, based on that NOI, I put it around, 34 to $36 million, which is, I mean, crazy high number, but in reality, it's not much different than doing a, $3.6 million deal, right?
That's
Just
right.
to add another
That's right.
zero.
Right.
Um, the difference on this that I've realized so far, I've had a few calls with some lenders and stuff. Somebody that actually Matt put me in contact with one of their brokers, and um, I've been actually got kind of a pseudo approval for one of them, basically for like a 10%, like a 90% LTV on that, which is, I mean, really great because I figured it'd be like more like if we were to do like a short term, I'm kind of thinking of ways to kind of go into this where it's like, do you do a, very little money down, probably not the best terms, and then hold that term for, 12 months and then refinance with a, more local bank showing, hey, we've managed this for 12 months. It looks great, yada, yada, and then get into better terms? Or is it more of just, trying to go in big with some of the bigger banks, in which I have the biggest bank in Indiana looking at this right now, and they're actually based out of Evansville where this is at. So this would be a pretty good deal for them. They're definitely interested, which is pretty cool.
What
So
you talking about community first?
no, Old National Bank. You ever heard of them?
How much because yeah, I mean, how the name of the game, have you spoken with the guy from Old National yet, Parker?
Yeah.
What's his opinion? Can they actually lend the money on it?
So okay, so I have a main
Partner up with
contact
other
there. She
banks,
want
spread the risk out.
what's that?
But they're gonna have to partner up with other banks and spread the risk out.
And I talked to a couple other banks, and they said the same thing, where they would essentially on the back side of this, they are willing to have like 4 to 5 million per entity that they would do, and they would just sell that out to other banks.
That's right.
He said you wouldn't see that, but some banks will just do it all at once. And Old National being one of the biggest ones the biggest one in Indiana, he said that they would entertain something like this, doing it all at once. But obviously, everything's got to work. And the biggest thing that I'm running into is a lot of people saying, "What's like the net worth of the people jumping on the loan?" And which is just a kind of a I think that might be a roadblock for this, even though it's a really good deal. The really strong tenants. I mean, Quantic takes up 315,000 square feet, and they're adding 30,000 to it. Everyone's just growing, and it's a good area down there too. And
A thought on this, a thought on this, so for everyone's understanding is when you have these banks, especially on large, because we're all chasing like the small lender as like our partner. That's the game. That's the way that you're able to get into these deals like creatively. But when you start getting into larger deals, like 40 million, like, and yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't closed a deal like this before. I haven't closed a $45 million transaction. So let me be transparent on that. But from my bankers' relationships, where we've looked at some $8 and $10 million deals, the immediate reaction is not so much about spreading out the personal guarantee risk. It's about them finding partners that will want to also carry on the risk of the borrower, right? Like what Parker was saying. So you can deal with local banks on this, and that's why they want to attach to personal guarantees. That's why that's so strong. I mean, again, it's a piece of paper. You're signing your name on the dotted line, right? But what my banker would recommend and suggest is you can take deals like this to the SBA market. Now, look, I'm getting a little bit, further ahead, but you can get this into non-recourse debt, and that's really where, in my book, would be the game would be is buying a building, raising some money for the down payment, whatever that number looks like. I mean, the site looks. I mean, there's a lot of, I can't imagine this tenant trying to go somewhere else cheaper, wherever they are right now. It'd be tough to move. But if you think about it for everyone here, if you can find ways to get your debt to be non-recourse, then you can borrow whatever amount of money and not be on the hook personally. So, Zane, you got an opinion on that? Am I beside myself on this?
No, I mean, I've also heard, of course, that, and I was actually just talking to, I think, Caleb earlier on the phone today about how banks really don't put as much weight on the borrower themselves, but this is a really gigantic deal, and I'm not even sure about how to go about this one in terms of, I don't have experience talking to bankers about deals this size, so it'll be like a new experience for me too.
Yeah, I'd say that for everybody, whether you guys are, and maybe everyone's in the shoes or they're not, but this is a good, I would say, learning curve for everyone where the key is that getting in relationships with bankers now, starting to like I'll say this for everyone that's on the call, have y'all started to have you met with a local banker? Have you had lunch or a coffee and spent time with them to try and get to know them as a person? Has everyone done that? I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on that. Have we all done that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a couple different relationship with multiple bankers
Good.
in my area.
Good. I mean, that's the only reason I mention that, and I'm so big on that is because whether it's $1 million or $10 million or whatever, they are always going to fund the majority of your purchase, right? So the name of the game is if you can figure out what their lending appetite is, whatever they're, excited about, whether it's storage facility. Now, look, every bank is a little bit different, right? Some guys have this desire, they want to do storage. These guys, not a lot want to do office, but some do. Next guy wants to do industrial. Next guy wants to do apartments, right? But if you know every single individual banker and what their excitement is that quarter, honestly, you're going to get a much better understanding of what type of purchase price that you're going to get, the loan to value, the amortization. You're going to get a much better understanding of that. And then when you have the deal, you can present it with them with that proposal for finance. So developing that relationship, at least for me, has been like a big key to where when I call them, they're like, "Hey, the answer is yes. Um, just let's figure out the details later. Like this morning, I'll spare you guys, but this morning I called, I got a building with a partner, and I just called my banker and I said, hey, I'm thinking about buying out my partner on this building. And he just was like, yes. He literally was like, yes, just let me know the details and we'll figure it all out. And so it's not like a huge deal. It's like a $500,000 building, right? It's not a big one, but it's enough to where he's like, hey, just tell me what you want to do and we'll find a way to back into the numbers and figure it out, right? So I say all that not to be braggadocious or anything. I'm saying it like the name of the game is developing relationships with your best partner, which is your lender. So that's my opinion. Anyone else have a thought on that?
I got a question actually. Most of the lenders that I know have to do, because I used to do real estate. Most of them are all like, I want to say like home loan lenders, which most of the market, I would say really most of the purchases there are like up underneath 500,000, probably closer to like 350 for on the lower side, 2 to 250. So where do you find lenders, or where should I start looking for more so like commercial size loans where you can have access to 500,000, $1 million, $2 million? Where would you look?
All
Or
right,
let me
very
ask.
simple. All right, before I answer,
Okay.
does anybody know the answer to this question? I'll answer it, but does anybody else have an opinion or a thought? All right, I'll jump in. So the first thing that I would do, I tell everyone in the same thing, go to that local real estate meetup, the same guys that you run with that are your real estate guys, your residential guys that are lending you or selling you, buying you properties at 300, $500,000. And you're like, how do I get to that seven-figure debt move? Ask those guys, hey, who's the best guy in your office that does commercial property, that does seven-figure deals? They're going to say, oh my God, you got to talk to John. John is so great. He's been doing it for 30 years, blah, 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 blah. Then you have audacity, and then you say, hey, look, will you send me a group text right now to John and I and introduce me to John? And just have like this, again, audacity. Immediately they're going to say, oh, absolutely, of course I will, because they know you. They're, at this point, friends. You're now at the top of this dude's list. Whoever this guy was, he's been doing it for a little bit of time. It's great. You say, hey man, this is no, I would say, this is Nolan. Can I go buy you a cup of coffee and just introduce myself, get to know you? This is the key. You sit down at a coffee shop for 45 minutes. You send them a Google invitation, email, the whole song and dance, like, be on time, whatever. I would spend, of the 45 minutes, I'd spend 38 to 40 minutes getting to know that broker. And this will all come together. I'll explain this. You spend 38 to 40 minutes of time with that broker, getting to know him as an individual, where he grew up, why is he from town, why did he stay around, is he out of town, why did he come here, what sports does he play in high school, where did he graduate from, what sports do his kids play, what's his golf handicap. Get to know him as an individual, as a person. You're trying to build a reputation, trying to build a relationship. Eventually, he's going to have some reciprocity and say, hey, what about you? You say, look, your time is valuable. It's not about me today. What I would like to do is I want to tell you exactly what I am looking for. And you bang out the 10 to 40,000 feet, 16-foot ceiling heights, multiple roll-up doors, less than a mile off the highway, triple net lease. You just like very casually introduce that concept. He's going to say, man, Caleb, I don't really have anything like that right now. You say, no problem, John. What do you got? Again, you just spent 35 minutes getting to know him as a person. So he's got oxytocin going in his brain. He wants to connect with you.
Okay.
Well, I do have this one site. I do have this one building. No, well, what's tomorrow look like, John? Let's go look at it. Let's go get our eyes on it. What do you think? All right, yeah, let's do it. That sounds good. Now you're walking a building. Now hang on. You're walking a building, and John's going to be excited. You're not going to close this one, but you're walking a site with a guy. You just set up a follow-up meeting by just going and doing something that the guy likes to do, which is show real estate. And then after that, you literally ask him, hey, look, man, you've been doing a lot of this. According to the guys that you run with, you've been doing this for a long time. When you guys are buying deals, who do you recommend I call when it comes to sourcing debt because every one of your buyers can't just show up with cash. And it's the same ask. It's the same, hey, who's the best banker that you run with that closes deals on your deals, right? It's the same thing. Oh man, you got to call 123 with ABC Bank. Would you shoot a group text with me and him right now? And it's the same connection. But what you just did is you just leveled up your referral on the real estate agent side. And then you just leveled up your referral to the local banker from the most local residential or commercial broker. So now that guy's going to be like, "Hey, yeah, oh man, I would love to get together with this Caleb guy. Sounds awesome." And then you have the same conversation. You spend 45 minutes with him. You spend 40 minutes of your time getting to know him as a person. You say, "Look, I know your time is valuable. What I'd like to do, and this is a key to get debt, I'd like to send you my personal financial statement and my last 2 years of tax returns. Now, look, don't just look at me as an individual. I'm going to be raising money on deals. But the most important piece, I know you have to underwrite me as a borrower, as your partner. And so I want to send you all the information that you need in order for when we actually do have that deal, we can be more agile." And that's kind of like the little snake to get to the top. And I'm not going to lie, it takes like a week to do that. It takes a week.
Okay.
It takes some courage to do that kind of thing. But you do that like once or twice with a couple of brokers and a couple of bankers. I'm telling you, man, they're going to end up like they're going to call you back when that deal comes back up and towards you. Does anybody have like a question or a thought on that, Caleb? You got an opinion?
Yeah, I was gonna say I got about 75% of that done. I just accidentally skipped the part where you asked them for the lender. So I
The
appreciate
lender is the
that.
move. That's your main piece right there that you're missing right there. Don't be afraid to just go for the ask like that because those guys, I'm telling you, like even in these bankers too, man, they want to lend you money. Like I probably hang out with one of my bankers every other week. Every week we go get a beer or something and just kind of talk about where we are in the market. Like we talk about, I mean, we're friends at this point, right? So uh we both have some kids and stuff. So we kind of rally around both of the fact that we're both struggling, just trying to just raise children. But I say all that, but it makes it a lot more fun when they get to know you as a person, and especially when you're able to. You've just been referred to them by like the local guy that closes all the deals. And then you gave them what they were asking for, which is your financial statement and your tax returns. Like, dude, I didn't even ask him for that, but he gave it to me because he must know that I needed that. So it just reduces the risk in their mind. You see what I'm saying? Like it's reducing the lending risk because you gave them what they needed before you asked for it. So that's the way that I've discovered and was has been have been taught by other guys that are bigger than me. And I'm like, if I can give these guys everything that they need without them having to ask for it, it proves my competency. And then when I do go and ask for something a little bit outside of their comfort zone, they have more trust in me because they're like, all right, no one knows what he's doing. And I trust because at the end of the day, it's really they're lending me money because they believe I can pay the loan back, And I think that's really what banks are in the business of. They're not in the real estate holding business, they're in the lending money business. So that's the way that I would view that if someone has an opinion or question on that.
Hey, I appreciate it. The answer.
Cool. Let's see here. All right, what's next? Anybody else here? I know we're got plenty of time here. I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Eric, what's up, man?
Hey, I just had a question for you regarding insurance. So I have a couple properties that are under contract, and I'm looking at the insurance piece of it now. And that's kind of a first for me in regards to trying to understand what's norm and what's not, because I'm getting quotes anywhere for, as an example, $5,000 to $44,000 for the same property per year. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I also have a tenant that's balking at the fact that they have to pay for anything that has to do with the building. Like they just want to ensure their content. So I'm like, okay, well, what's normal? And then I have another one that's an absolute net lease that has a certificate of insurance, and the current owner, has I'm sorry, the tenant has the current owner listed as a loss payee and an additional insured, so liability as well as the building, the full building's on there. So in that case, there, like, do you need anything in addition to that? And then in the other case where there's no insurance, what do you do in terms of what do you get as the landlord and what do they pay for kind of a thing. So because like between those two examples, I got one on the one extreme where the tenant's paying everything, but everything I've read and research said you should still get your own policy because you never know, they might cancel it, who knows, right? Then on the other thing I have where I'm trying to get insurance, but at the same time I don't know how much to ask the tenant to do, because it seems very duplicative. Like why should I cover the building and they to cover the building, and they're naming me and lost payee? It just sort of seems like a little too much, right? So I just wanted to check with you to find out what's normal.
Okay, so let me answer the first question first because I experienced this as well. When you have a when you have so for example, I have a big building. For those that went to my live event, it was the first one that we went to look at. It's a huge ass property. It's like 70,000 square feet. It's big. And I had a tenant where actually there was one night this happened back in like February. A windstorm came through and it like dented in one of the roll up doors, right? And that's neither here nor there. I paid for it because it's my building, right? Whatever. But what I did is like my tenant's name is Steve, and I said, Steve, hey, let me tell you something, man. I'm gonna increase the I'm gonna increase the coverage on this building from what you're paying now, which is like $1,000. I increase it to like $1,800, so a month. And he's like, well, this, that, and the other. I said, Steve, well, then look, dude, I'll keep it at what you want if you want me to. I said, but you got personal property insurance. Of course, because you're a business owner. And let's just say a tornado comes through in Alabama. Never been a tornado. There's never been a tornado in the state of Alabama in the history of the world, right? He's like, okay, I get what you're saying. And I said, Steve, if a tornado comes through and you can insure $4 million worth of real estate or worth of property and you get a check the next day for 4 million bucks, how are you going to operate your business? In what facility? There is no facility anymore. So you need to also insure the facility that you're going to operate your business out of. So it's up to the tenant. And then you can say this, look, if you don't want to insure the building, that's no problem. I'll pay for it. But then guess what? Then you void your lease. And it's like this, you can get into litigation, I guess, but that's not the point. My opinion would be is if you would like to not pay for that, well, then I'm just going to increase your rental income in order to compensate for that risk that I'm taking on as a landlord. You see what I'm saying?
So yeah, yeah. So for normal for you then, with triple net, absolute net, and everything basically is that the tenant basically just insures their property. They don't insure the building in any way. Then you go get your own policy that insures the building as well as general liability. I guess the tenant also has
The
general
tenant
liability.
reimburses that.
Oh, really? Okay,
They
so they
reimburse
pay their
the
own policy.
general liability insurance. That's right. And the reason why, so to be clear for everybody, like you might be thinking, well, a triple net lease only benefits the net landlord. Like it doesn't. It actually it is a net for the landlord and the tenant because if you had a triple net lease or if you had a gross lease and you did not have a triple net lease on whatever on the building that you owned, me as a landlord, I have to compensate for potential risks, potential losses. So I have to increase my rental income in order to encompass all of those particular risks. So
Right.
what I've done, or what triple net leases do, is they reduce that net outgoing risk in order to give that to the tenant to reduce their monthly or annual expenses. And it doesn't really shift risk to the tenant. It just allows the tenant to be more in control of the space that they're occupying. So for
Right.
example, property taxes, they can go down to the courthouse and they can say, hey, the taxes are too expensive. If they want to go to the insurance carrier and say, we need this, that, the other, they can go and be in more control of that. Same way, if you're in a dentist office and me as a landlord, I'm not in control of the parking lot or the wall and there's ivy growing on, I don't do anything on the parking lot. It's dirty. Nobody wants to go get their teeth cleaned there because me as a landlord, I don't have any incentive to go and keep the space clean, right? The owner of the building or the owner of the business does. So that's kind of like the trade-off between like being a business owner and like the real estate owner. The owner of the business has incentive to maintain the property themselves and to have complete control of the facility so they can generate more revenue for their business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So then just to kind of summarize it for the insurance, what's normal is that you ask the tenant to pay for their own personal property as well as liability. You go get the property policy as well as liability, and then you basically charge back for that as part of the triple net, right?
If they're paying $10,000 a month in rent, I would charge them 12,000 for 1,000 for interest, or 1,000 for insurance, 1,000 for taxes, or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was my next one. Like, what do you typically budget for yourself for what it costs you for insurance policies? Because, like I said, I'm seeing this massive 5,000 to 40 some thousand thing. I was like, oh my God, this
What's their
is.
existing policy?
Uh,
Because that's what I would look at. I look at their existing policy, then I call my insurance guy and I would say, hey man, what's the cost on this? That's a huge deviation between 5,000 and 45,000. I mean, I would always, this sounds crazy, but I would always lean on the more expensive insurance. The more expensive the insurance, if we're being candid, the better the coverage you have, obviously. It's
then
it's
you
a
got to
poor
pass that
person's
back to the.
mentality to go cheap. Like,
Yeah.
don't go cheap on insurance. That's what I've
But
discovered.
if you don't mind me asking, like for one of your buildings, whatever size it is, like, can you give me a rough estimation of what a
Sure.
normal
So
insurance
in
cost?
Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama, we just bought a building back in February, maybe, or January, whatever. 1,000,035. It's 17,000 square feet. The annual insurance cost was like $9,000. And
Okay.
so they reimburse me every month the 80, 82 or $820 or whatever it is, or
Okay.
whatever
No, that's
the
really helpful.
insurance
Yeah,
cost
that's
is.
awesome.
Yeah,
And if I could, just one last question. Sorry. So
absolutely. Of
for
course.
triple nets, I know in the course materials and things you go through this, where you basically like um, uh, the tenant basically pays you for all the triple net expenses, and you go out and pay the taxes, insurance, and all these other things. So that way, you did it. But then you mentioned a comment earlier where like it's in their interest to pay for these things because then they can go fight for cheaper insurance and stuff. So if you're the one paying it, it's in your name. Like, do they have that ability, or in that case, do you have to ship it in their name for them to be able to go out and do things like that?
Ship it into what do you mean?
Well, I guess what's normal for you? Like, so do you normally keep the taxes, insurance, everything in your name, and you're paying that bill yourself, and then that the tenant never sees that bill? You're just charging them a triple net premium, if
Right.
you will.
That's right. So this is how I do this. This is exactly how I do this. So in the beginning of the year, let's say that a 10,000 square foot warehouse, let's say it cost $6,000 a month to rent, hypothetically, right? And then it's $1,000 of a month, or let's say it's 500 bucks of insurance, 500 bucks of taxes, right? Hypothetically. So they're going to pay me every single month $7,000, right? So what I do at the very beginning of the year, or whenever that insurance renewal comes up, especially after I pay the taxes, I just like send them. I keep the receipt and say, this is what it costs for the past year. We can anticipate. Here's the millage rate, which is usually 0.0075. The property taxes usually increase like another $100, right? It's not like there's not a huge deviation, right? So what I say is, this is what we can anticipate. You paid me last year $7,000 a month. Moving forward, you have two options. You can pay me, another $7,000 a month, and then a year from now, we can figure out exactly what it costs, and you can reimburse me. I'll ACH you, or here's your insurance cost. This is what it's going to increase naturally because insurance doesn't never go backward. So, and I can charge you what it is right now, and then there's not a reimbursement at the end of the year. And I give them the illusion of choice. And
Yeah.
usually my tenants are very happy with that. They're like, look, whatever the cost is, because, again, it kind of goes back philosophically. If you buy the building with like a tenant that has decent income, they're not really worried about like the tiny little nickel and diming cost. They're like, what the hell is the cost? Just tell me what the number is. That way I can budget for it. And there I can just run my business on and stay out of my way. They're
Right.
bulldozers. So what I just always offer them at the very beginning, I get on a call with all my tenants and say, look, here was the cost. I can keep it this way and you're going to reimburse me in 12 months, or this is what I can anticipate. I'm going to increase your property tax allotment by another $100. This is what's going to run. Bam, bam. And then also too, here's a couple of options. I sit there on the call with my insurance guy. I offer them a couple options on things that if they want to improve coverage one way or another. It makes them feel like I care. It makes them feel like I want to, help them, protect their business and things. With my insurance guy on the phone, they actually really love that. That's a nice little touch if you want to do that. But then it's usually around the same amount of coverage and price. And then I say, here is what your extra nets are on top of the rent that you owe me. So $5,000, and then your nets are an extra $2,044. So I'm going to charge you every month for the next 12 months $7,044. And they're like, sounds great, Nolan. And I just type it into my ACH on my bank, and it just starts to auto draft. And then on my end, I just the 7,000 comes in, and I auto draft the payment to the bank and auto draft to the insurance company, and then I put it in my third party for the taxes later on.
Okay.
If
Oh,
if you can see that kind of like feel on
yeah,
that.
yeah. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to make
Takes
sure
some
that,
time setting up out of the gate, and it's kind of annoying, but your tenants will love you, and they're not going to want to leave because they appreciate your like you being forward about how you service them. If that makes
yeah.
sense.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. It's
So,
perfect.
yeah, 100%. Anybody else got a thought, a question, anything like that?
Separate question
Yeah.
for you. Um, I'm curious in terms of the going back to Parker's lead. It is obviously that's out of the collective's buy box by a couple of feet. So what's
Just a
the
few,
thinking
not
there?
much,
And
but just, I mean, maybe like 2,000 feet, maybe.
yeah, but in terms of I like to keep pretty rigid rules, and it is good practice to kind of have very specific. So what's the thinking there, and can we do the same? I'd rather pick up a $10 million property than a $1 million property, and cash flow more from the beginning and split it with others. So is that something, maybe not this big, but what's the thinking behind such a large acquisition?
Man, I'm not opposed to when there's deals like this that come across, and if I'm being candid, I mean, Parker, you can jump in, but I look at this as kind of like one of those, this is like a generational style property, really. That would be my best way of describing it. If you can find the best way to take it down.
What
Um,
was the cap rate on it? I don't, did we say?
Parker shot some details of it. Here's his proposal for finance. Here's the details. 43 million, 44 bucks a foot, which is actually not really bad. And then um I mean the guys
That's a little outdated, to be honest.
what's that, Parker?
Uh, that's a little outdated. If we were to go in, so like I said, that was based on a $43 million purchase price. It typically be around a 34 and a half or 35 million, which is like a 10.12 cap, like almost like a
Excellent.
10, like a 10 over 10 cap.
Yeah.
But not only that, but the money that needs to be brought to the table is so low that there's so much cash flow left over as well. It's not like a traditional
Right.
deal where we're going and raising like 25 or 30% of the purchase price.
Right. Yeah, you're talking about being able to basically control I mean, appraised value, probably $45 million asset with 2 million bucks, which, you know, that's the game. I think that's what leverage is all about, right? Leverage is like a gun. You can protect yourself or you can kill yourself with it, right? It's the whole song and dance. That's what leverage is. Um,
Okay.
but you know, it, it's one of those things where I mean, it can change your life. Again, a gun in your hand can change your life, right? It's like anything else. I don't know how else to describe it, right? So I'm definitely not opposed. As Parker and I were talking on the phone about this a couple of days ago. Just trying to figure out exactly what the offer looks like and the and just figuring out what like the quote unquote capital stack would look like. I think the key is before making offers, and this is my recommendation for doesn't matter if it's a big or small deal. I always say the same thing, like just having your team assembled, but man, having a guy that you can call your bank and be like, as a friend, and be like, yo, let's go get a beer and let's talk about this because I got this one thing. Like, I'll call a couple of my guys and they might be like, Nolan, because I did this the other day on another deal. And I said, this is what I'm thinking about doing. He's like, dude, don't do that. Like, that's stupid, whatever. And I'm probably going to do it anyway. That's neither here nor there, but that's another deal. Um, it'll make me more money, but it's a little more risky, but that doesn't matter. But in this case, answering, calling your bank and say, this is where I'm at. And it gets to where the kind of the salesmanship comes in, like, when you got confidence in your proposal for finance, you show up and say, this is kind of where we're at, and you give them an overview. This is what matters. This is why this deal will work, and this is how I'm going to make you money. To me, that's like it's sales, right? We say it every week. It's sales, right? Like, how can you sell a banker as to give you literally $32 million, which is like it's more money than I think all of us on this call have, right? I mean, honestly, it just is. So I hope that we all end up having more than this. But again, this is the opportunity that can really make it work. So um, I don't know. I don't want to word vomit.
Well, the answer to the question is it's a deal, and therefore we should give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, find a way. Yeah, let's find a way on how it works, and make some calls to some lenders and figure out. I mean, you guys in California, Matt, you guys can see these multi-million-dollar deals all the time. Um,
Yeah, the cap rates suck out here. That's the challenge.
yeah, they're strong out there.
Yeah.
Depending
I have
upon
a
what
broker
side of the
that's
coin you're on. For the sellers, they're strong,
yes. Yeah.
Just need
I've
to be
been working with a broker for the past 6 months, and he's been looking for deals, and he finally found one that was off market, and he presented to me like an amazing deal, and it was 5.6% cap rate, and and I penciled it all in our pro forma and sent it back to him, said it doesn't cash flow, it's not a deal to me, so I need to understand what a deal to him is. So
a lot
yeah,
of those brokers, I feel like too, I'm not knocking them. They're just somebody's interested in selling and they price it out there and they throw a dart at a map. And eventually somebody with 1031 money's got to park it. Otherwise, it just mathematically makes more sense to buy it at a 6 than it does to pay the tax. And then
yep.
they're pricing it for 1031 money. So
I think his
all it is.
typical clientele is high net worth individuals. He said, "Well, if you don't like it, Matt, I have some lawyers that'll probably pick it up." Okay, so different set of expectations.
That's right. That's right. I like what you're shooting us, Matt, right now with kind of these oil deals in Texas and stuff. I think especially if you can get some owner users, not like preying on people, but when you get guys that are not real estate investors, you end up having opportunity to tie up deals at a better price because they're more uneducated on the market. So it's not predatory, it's not taking advantage. That's just you as an investor being understanding the market, being smarter, calculated, and pulling the trigger when you have the opportunity.
Yeah.
So my opinion, I guess. All right, everyone. Good call. I appreciate it. What I'll do, again, if you guys have any thoughts, questions, or whatever's on your mind, don't hesitate. You guys know the drill. We'll be on standby for anything that you need. Zane, I want to believe you had sent out some emails for our live event that's coming up. Just making sure that did everyone get that? Making sure, Zane?
Yeah. I sent it out to some people to test it out, and then I'll send it out to the rest of everybody tonight.
Okay, good. All right, cool. Yeah, just making sure that this evening you'll get that email from us, just giving you the invitation to our event. And man, we're just excited for what we're growing on and building on, and excited to keep moving forward in 2025 and beyond. So holler at us if you got anything else going on, and we'll be on standby. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank